So today we're going to be diving into one of the most controversial topics in Fisch, and that's the use of macros. When we say macros, we're talking about automating certain aspects of the game, such as AFK fishing and automating appraisals. So, you know, if you're trying to get like that shiny or sparkling, so like if you're trying to auto appraise something, so I got like this Moby here, which is a big controversy, by the way. That's a separate controversy. We're going to talk about this horrible update for Moby, but I can pretty much auto click this all day long, but it still means I have to equip number 7 slot and then click, right? So that could be a macro right here. And that's what I'm talking about when it comes to macroing. Naturally, in a game like Fisch, where clicking the shake button repeatedly can be mind-numbingly boring, many players turn to macros to ease this grind, because who wants to keep clicking on this stupid shake button? It's actually a really horrible design of a mechanic. Like, this part's kind of fun. I like this. But who wants to click on the shake button? So this is an intended design that people are trying to avoid. It eases the pain of fishing. But why do the developers dislike macros so much yet don't outright ban them? And what makes the use of macros so controversial? One is you do have reduced player engagement. Macros allow players to progress without actively playing the game, which can obviously frustrate developers who want players to engage with the game as intended. They design the game a certain way, and they want players to play it the way they designed it. It's like a chef carefully crafting a meal, only for you to just like drench it with ketchup. Developers see macros as taking shortcuts and not appreciating the game they designed. There's also some balance issues. Players who macro can amass wealth and items at a much higher rate than active players. Obviously, someone just kind of chilling here and fishing all day, not going to make as much money as someone that's able to do this overnight, because obviously quantity volume is always going to outweigh quality here. This can lead to imbalance, making progression feel unfair for those who can't use macros, such as you mobile players. And then there's developer policies on macros. You know, Fisch's developers allow macros, but they don't endorse them. Basically, hey, you're allowed to use macros, but don't let us find you sharing them. We're going to ban you if you get found. And they even have a message on their Discord saying redistributing macros on the Discord or in-game is bannable, and content creators in the program, by the way, that I just left because of this, are prohibited from making macro-related tutorials, which, like I said, is one of the reasons why I left the program. It's not like I was sharing any macros or anything like that. I just didn't like the fact that they had this really strict policy, and I felt by making this video, speaking my mind about macros, they'd probably kick me out of the program. Like, think about that. I'm in a program that's supposed to support me as a creator, and instead there's a bunch of strict rules in there of what you can and can't post on Fisch. Personally, I find this policy kind of extreme, but we're going to get back to that later. Now, let's talk about why players use macros in the first place. Now, I surveyed my Discord and my YouTube channel, and 54% of my Discord audience admitted to using macros. 26% of them used auto-clickers, and 20% never used either of them. And 50% of my YouTube community admitted to using macros. 90% used auto-clickers, and 32% never used either. Many who voted no were mobile players, and it wasn't because they didn't want a macro, it's because they couldn't. And the reason why people use macros include, you know, reducing the grind and fatigue. So Fisch is an incredibly grindy game, and clicking shake 20,000 times just to catch 6,000 fish is kind of tedious, depending on the rod you're using. If you're using something like this, obviously you have no delay. But what about all the rods in the game that are designed to be very, very slow? Even if you were to use hasty on that rod, it's still a bunch of shake clicks. Macros allow players to skip the repetitive parts and focus on the more enjoyable parts like quests and puzzles. Or if you're, you know, enchanting stuff like I am right now, this is something you're going to be experiencing. You can't really automate this. Why would you automate something that's got obviously going to have a lot of waste to it? The other thing that's kind of nice about macros is you can progress while you're away. So, you know, macros let players farm while sleeping, working, or at school. It makes the game more enjoyable and rewarding when they return. So, you know, you wake up in the morning, you find you have a ton of money. It's really nice. There's also some creativity in making macros. So macro creators get the enjoyment out of the challenge of making a macro, and it's kind of cool. You know, you could automate stuff. So like back in my islands days, you know, part of the fun was designing macros that allowed you to like auto cut trees before they had, you know, sapling replants, and before they had any way to automate planting of trees and cutting. So you could make like an auto, you know, wood farm that you could AFK that made it so a mechanic that was missing from the game altogether was possible. And those devs were completely fine with it. In fact, they enjoyed seeing it. It was really cool to see what we did with their game. Now, what's the impact of macros on Fisch? Well, given that 50% of my audience used macros, it's likely a majority of the Fisch players do as well. If macros were completely banned, the game would see a huge drop, since many players only engage through macros, and Roblox's algorithm would penalize the game because lower session times. Fisch has an average of of 21 minutes. If you think about it, if all of the macro users were to quit, this would be a very, very sad number. This would probably be only about 5 minutes to 15 minutes tops. And why? It's because it's boring to click the shake. No one likes clicking the shake button. This is high purely because of the fact that you got AFK players in here. I mean, look at this, like 20 minutes. If they were to put something in here to block AFK players, yeah, this is gonna tank. And then Roblox isn't gonna recommend the game as much. There'd also be a decline in engagement since most players won't stick around for hours of manual fishing. They're just gonna like come in, fish for 5 minutes and be bored. It's pretty clear. I'm actually surprised that they only have a 20-minute average play session time. That's pretty nuts to me. So why do the devs still fight against macros? It says right here, important PSA regarding macros. I feel like this deserved an entire pink for this. Recently, I made a poll regarding the possibility of an auto farm feature in the public QA server as a way to offer a safer way of macroing for all users, instead of having you guys go out of your way to download them online. This poll was rejected and therefore isn't being added into the game. Now, the part for this whole comment here, this first line here is kind of counters everything that is said below. As a result of this, I would like to make it very clear that everybody must exercise extreme caution when downloading macros online and be skeptical of doing so. And this is a no-brainer. This should be the case for any software you download online, by the way. The only software I can recommend is AutoHotkey, as is the safest tool for doing so. Agree with that. Just make sure you're getting this from the official website, of course. He didn't say that, but he should have probably said where to get that, because there's a bunch of knockoffs. I would heavily recommend against any other macros that inject any form of interface or buttons that you click to toggle or tweak these macro configurations. Any macro that does anything other than automate user input through your keyboard should not be used. This is not me banning its use. This is for your safety. And I agree with this. Usually these will include viruses. So that's why he's saying that. Another reason as to why we allow macro use but not the public distribution of it is because of this safety concern. They're saying they're worried about your safety, but in turn for doing this, by saying like, we're not allowing you to distribute macros, it basically makes it really, 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 really hard for you to get these safe ones. The safe macros are out there, and sadly, they're making it only possible for you to find the unsafe macros by doing this. It's actually doing exactly what they're afraid of, and it's making it unsafe. Literally type in Fisch Macro on YouTube. You're going to find most of the unsafe macros there. Pretty much 9 out of 10 are going to be scams or unsafe macros. Whereas if they allowed content creation for that, then it would be completely different. You would actually find the real ones by your favorite content creators. So why using a macro is allowed but not recommended. Automating user input in a way that is possible through manual input is allowed. Basically, they're saying macros are fine, since this isn't something we can effectively moderate or regulate by any means. Therefore, it wouldn't make sense to restrict player automation as long as it's not reaching beyond human capacity. They're basically saying we don't like that you're macroing here, and since we can't do anything about it, we're not going to regulate it. And the funny thing is they could, it's just too much work. It's just too much work to fight that. In conclusion, though, just don't use macros if you care about the game. Now, this is bogus to me. This is a really, really weird comment from Const. I don't understand why they said this. It's almost like he's saying you don't care about the game if you use macro. They were in the point of having fun in Fish. I don't know if they understand what the fun is in Fish, but I don't think they play Fish. Honestly, like, this game is very boring to click shake over and 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 over. And the things that make Fish fun are not the fishing part. I'm sorry, like, fishing's kind of fun. Most of the fun is all the puzzle stuff that they've been adding. Most of the fun is the social elements. Most of the fun is making really cool builds and finding like what the best way is to make money. It's not like the fact that you're sitting there fishing. All right, so macros aren't going to ruin the gameplay experience. It's really not worth it, and you'll regret doing so when you soon realize there's no sense of personal achievement. I mean, I've macroed and I have a sense of a lot of achievement. If you're going to take this approach, then you also have to shame pay to win. You have to shame anyone that's ever been in a public server with a boost, and anyone that's ever given you money or items or fish in the game. This would also be included in that. You didn't achieve that. You didn't earn that. You didn't, earn that money that you just got. I could go all day long with this comment here. It's actually really crazy that he posted that. If you want a macro, go for it. Nobody's holding you back. Just make sure you're not compromising your own account or system's integrity and safety while doing so. This is very important that he said that. I think people are still doing this because, again, this part here, they're not allowing people to distribute safe macros. They're making it so hard for you to get safe macros that you're only going to be able to get the unsafe ones, which is horrifying. But just realize you're not racing against anybody, nor are you expected to sit 10 hours a day for fishing. Okay, Yes, you are. Go at your own pace. You're doing weekly updates, devs. Like, you're literally doing updates every week, and you're making mechanics in the game that require people to fish 6,000 times for a Valentine's swan boat. Like, this is crazy that they don't think that there's a race. Their boat, that Midnight Cruiser that they posted, that thing was so hard for you to get that you had to race to get it. The best way to get it was to macro. And go at your own pace, okay? Nobody's going to shame you for doing so. Well, you're going to feel bad when you miss out on stuff. And that's what's happening here. However, I believe the real issue isn't so much macros, it's the pay to win mechanics. You know, we're so focused on the negativity of macro using. No one's really talking about how much we can spend here. Like, you got this flipper bundle here. I can gift this over and over, and it's got 64 times server luck. That is the easiest way to make money. It's not the macro users, but like, I could catch literally secret after secret after secret by boosting this with Robux. Why are people complaining about macros? It's insane. You know, Fisch allows players to spend Robux to boost server by 1,000 times. Like, I can literally keep boosting over and over. And it makes macros seem kind of like a minor issue in comparison. You know, if the developers are going to criticize macros, they should reconsider the impact of pay-to-win mechanics. At the end of the day, Fisch is not a competitive game, so why would macro users feel ashamed, you know? If the devs haven't outright banned macros, then why not use them? Like, you should just use them if you want to. Don't feel ashamed of using them. It'd be different if the devs did ban macros, then I could say, okay, well, you're not supposed to do that. You should be ashamed for not abiding their, you know, policies or rules. If they have a rule of not using macros, you shouldn't do it. But instead, what they've done is they've allowed macros with shame. So basically, like, shame on you for using macros. We didn't design the game for macros. You shouldn't use them, but we're not going to ban them. We're going to allow them. It's a very confusing message to your audience. And what happens is it causes half the community to like shame anyone that uses them. And think about it. When was the last time you actually fished for 2 hours plus straight? I actually did do that. I did it for 24 hours and it's not fun. Trust me, 24 hours nonstop fishing is pain. It hurts your back, it hurts your neck, it hurts your hand. Everything hurts by the time you're done with that 24 hours. And not only that, you're tired and exhausted and it's just boring. The game got really boring as a result of that. So yeah, macros are not the enemy here. The real problem with Fisch is going to be the bots, the hackers. There's tons of hackers in the game and some weird mechanics. Like, some of these mechanics just don't make any sense. I mean, by doing a level 1000 or making rods that are worth 15 million, you know, coming out with like weird balance issues where you're, you know, buffing an enchant and then you're nerfing it. It's kind of weird. So I think the game needs to kind of focus a little less on macros, loosen up, allow people to macro, maybe loosen the rules a bit on that. Because if you didn't realize, there's a lot of YouTubers out there that are not very friendly who are selling Fisch macros as a business. I hear they're making paywall kind of macros. They're also doing stuff where like sketch stuff where, you know, you install their macro and it could end up, you know, having viruses. You can also have Trojans on those things. You're also going to see like people making videos saying, join my Discord for the macro. And that's worse than just the devs saying, hey guys, go ahead and, you know, support macros, because then maybe there's going to be a lot less viruses out, a lot less people getting scammed by making it so mysterious on how to obtain one. It shouldn't be like that. It should just be like any other game that allows macros. Go ahead and share your macros. Go ahead and make your videos on macros. It doesn't really matter. Then maybe people won't get into trouble or get scammed. So yeah, my opinion on macros, if you want to use it, go for it, unless the devs say otherwise. And I really do think the devs need to be a little looser about this. I think it's kind of ridiculous that they're so harsh about it. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think macros should be banned from the community? Do you think they should be open? Should we just let people macro if they want to, just like they do inside other games like Bee Swarm? They do it in Islands. They do it in, you know, Pet Sim. They do it in all kinds of tycoon simulators, all that. I mean, I don't really personally see the harm, but curious about your opinion. Also, you know, understand that mobile users can't macro, so it is pretty unfair, but honestly, you mobile users, you have a lot of things you can't do. So I think you're used to it by now. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next vid. Peace.